One morning, I found out that at least 4 out of my 5 kids aren't mine by blood. A DNA test tore apart the life I once thought was perfect. The woman I've loved for more than 30 years just stayed silent, pretending nothing happened. I never thought a tragedy like this would ever happen to me. Before I go on, please subscribe and tell me where you're listening from in the comments below. It all started with something that seemed harmless. My oldest daughter, she's 33 now, was so excited to tell me she'd taken one of those ancestry DNA tests just for fun to learn a bit about her roots. I still remember that afternoon. She walked over, phone in hand, eyes filled with confusion, voice trembling, saying, "Dad, I think something's wrong." At first I thought it was just a technical error, until I looked at the genetic chart. There wasn't a single trace of Irish blood in her results. My whole family, pure Irish for generations. No mix, no question. I tried to smile to calm her down, told her those tests weren't always accurate, that she shouldn't worry. But the way she looked at me, anxious, guilty, it stirred something inside me. A quiet fear, something I'd never felt before. I've been a father for over 30 years. I've seen each of my kids come into this world, take their first steps, grow into who they are. Never once did I imagine I'd question the very blood that ties us together. A few days later, my daughter asked if we could do an official DNA test at a medical lab. I agreed, partly to ease her mind, partly to silence that growing doubt inside me. I had no idea that cold printed report would become the beginning of a nightmare. The result was clear. I wasn't her biological father. I just sat there frozen, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hold the paper. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, like everything I'd ever believed in just collapsed in a single moment. My daughter burst into tears. I pulled her into my arms. I don't even know if I was comforting her or holding on for my own strength. And I cried too. Really cried. Something I hadn't done in years. The days after that were a blur of questions spinning in my head. Why? When? How many times I thought back on our marriage, every family trip, every quiet movie night, every moment we held hands and faced the world together. There was never a sign, not one crack in the memory of our life. I used to think she and I were proof that first love could really last a lifetime. Now, it all felt like a cruel joke. I knew I needed answers. If it was a mistake, I'd face it and prove it wrong. But if it was true, I had to know how deep the betrayal ran. So I decided to talk to my other kids, all except the youngest. She's only 14. Too young for this storm. That night, the 4 of us sat in the living room. I told them everything, every detail, and said I wanted to do DNA tests for each of them. I was afraid they'd be angry or hurt, but no. They were silent for a long while. Then one by one they said, "Dad, no matter what, we'll always be your kids." I couldn't hold back the tears. Their love was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. A week later, the results came in one by one. Each envelope I opened felt like another knife to the heart. 3 more, not biologically mine. 4 out of my 5 children, the ones I'd raised, loved, and sacrificed my whole life for, shared no blood with me. Worse yet, they each had different fathers. I sank to the floor. No anger left. Just emptiness. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking clock, feeling my whole life tear apart piece by piece. It wasn't just trust in my wife that I lost. It was my sense of who I am. Who am I, if not the father of the children I gave my heart to? But even through the wreckage, one truth stayed clear. I still love my kids, not because of DNA, but because of every laugh, every hug, every memory we've shared. They're my flesh and blood and spirit, even if not by nature. And that's why I made up my mind to find the truth. Not just to understand what happened, but to protect whatever's left of my family. After getting those 4 DNA results, I knew I couldn't delay any longer. I needed to hear the truth, from the woman who'd walked beside me for more than 30 years. I'd prepared myself for every possible outcome, that she'd cry, that she'd confess, that there'd be some kind of reason, no matter how small, to make it all hurt a little less. But I was wrong. That night, I sat in the living room, those cold sheets of paper still in my hand. When she walked in, I said just one thing: I took DNA tests. Not just with our oldest, but with 3 of the others too. She froze for a few seconds, then smiled. A calm, almost chilling smile. "And you believe that stuff? What, another one of those internet scams?" Her voice was light, steady, not a tremor, not a hint of fear. I went quiet. I thought I'd explode, shout, break something. But no. What I felt was cold, bone-deep cold. I handed her the papers, certified copies, red seals, medical proof. She glanced at them, set them on the table, shrugged. "Someone's tricked you." "That's not true. You're being paranoid." My voice shook when I asked, "You really have nothing to say? 4 kids, 3 different fathers. You think these papers are a joke?" She sighed and looked away. "I'm disappointed in you. After all these years, you still don't trust me." That line, soft, gentle, even cut deeper than any scream could. Because in that moment I realized she'd chosen denial over truth. No tears, no confession, not even guilt, just silence, and a twisted kind of calm that felt colder than betrayal itself. In the days that followed, I tried to talk again and again. Each time she dodged, it changed the subject, said she was tired. Once I overheard her on the phone telling a friend he's losing his mind over some stupid DNA tests. I had to step outside. I stood in the yard, staring at the night sky, feeling like my whole life had been stripped of a voice. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. I wanted to cry, but the tears were gone. Sleep stopped coming. Every time I closed my eyes, old memories flooded back: our wedding day, holding our first child, the joy in her eyes, when she cradled that baby. Now every image was stained with lies. I kept asking myself, were any of those moments real, or have I been a stranger in my own life all along? Still, through all that chaos, I tried to stay calm. For the kids. They were the only thing holding me together. I couldn't let them see their parents turn into enemies, so I kept talking, kept cooking, kept working, pretending everything was normal. But deep down, I knew nothing could be fixed anymore. One evening, we were all having dinner together. I looked at my wife laughing, talking as if nothing had ever happened. Then I looked at the kids, the ones I'd loved and raised with everything I had, and in that moment I felt nothing. No anger, no rage, just emptiness. I understood then sometimes silence is crueler than any confession, because it forces you to live with questions that never get answered, to relive the pain every time your mind reaches for the truth. And me, a husband who once believed love could survive anything, I was destroyed by one simple sentence: "I don't know what you're talking about." When she began avoiding even my eyes, when every meal turned heavy with unspoken words, I knew what I had to do next. Bring the kids into it, not for revenge, but for the truth. I couldn't let this lie devour our family. No matter how much it hurt, I had to face it. That was the moment I decided I would stop waiting for her confession. I would seek justice through her silence. After that night, when I finally accepted that my wife would never tell the truth, I knew the only people I could still rely on were my kids. They didn't create this tragedy, but they were dragged into it all the same. I had to talk to them, not to find more pain, but to hold on to whatever truth was left in this family. I called the 4 older ones home that weekend. The air was so heavy I could feel every breath I took. When everyone had settled down, I took a deep breath and said, "Kids, there's something I need to tell you. It's not easy." No one spoke. Only the ticking of the clock filled the silence, stretching every second. I told them everything from the first DNA test to the ones that followed, to their mother's cold reaction. I spoke slowly, clearly, trying to keep my voice from breaking. When I finished, all I could do was sit there and wait. What I didn't expect was their response. No questions, no anger, no blame. My oldest daughter came over, took my hand, tears streaming down her face. Dad, we already know, and we still have only one father, you. I couldn't hold back anymore. The others rushed in and wrapped their arms around me. In that moment, I felt a kind of love that had nothing to do with blood, yet it was the truest love I'd ever known. I used to think blood was what held a family together. But no, it's the years of love, care, and sacrifice that weave the strongest bond. My son, 28, the quiet one, spoke up after a long silence. Dad, DNA doesn't define love. You're the one who taught me how to be a man. Someone else might have given us blood, but only you gave us a heart. I looked at him, and for the first time in weeks, my heart broke again, but this time from gratitude, from being loved when I thought I'd lost everything. We spent that whole afternoon talking, not about betrayal, but about memories, real family memories. They reminded me of when I taught them to ride bikes when we got lost on a camping trip, when I burned the soup, but insisted it still tastes good, right? Laughter mixed with tears. And I realized no matter how cruel the truth was, the bond between us had never been touched. But that warmth didn't last long, because I still had to face my youngest. She's only 14. She didn't know anything yet. And I couldn't let her find out through whispers or rumors. That night I sat beside her in her room. I told her Mom and I were going through something difficult, that there were complicated things about our family, and that she deserved the truth and the choice to know. I showed her the DNA paper, but didn't force her to look. She looked at me for a long time, her eyes calm, older than her years. I don't need to see it, Dad, because no matter what, you'll always be my dad. I pulled her into my arms and held her tight, and in that moment, I felt a strength I can't quite describe, the power of unconditional love. The same children I thought I'd lost were the ones pulling me out of the darkness. After that day, I started to heal little by little. Not because things were fixed, but because I knew I still had something worth living for, something worth protecting. I took the kids to therapy with me so we could face the trauma together in a healthy way. And when I saw them laugh again, still calling me Dad, I understood something profound even after betrayal. I hadn't lost everything, because in all the wreckage, a father's love was the one thing still standing. After talking with my kids, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Even though everything around me was falling apart, their love that was the rope pulling me out of the dark. But I also knew love alone wasn't enough. The truth was still there like an open wound, and if I didn't face it, it would keep bleeding, quietly eating away at everything we had left. So I started by taking a second DNA test at a different lab, bigger, more reputable. I needed to be sure I wasn't blinded by emotion. While waiting for the results, every day felt like a lifetime. I couldn't sleep. I spent hours staring at papers, drowning in my own thoughts. But what hurt the most was how she stayed silent, still cleaned the house, still cooked, still greeted me every morning with that same gentle voice. That normalcy, that calm, it was the most abnormal thing of all. When the second results arrived, every doubt disappeared. 4 of the children were not mine. No more excuses. No more maybe. I printed everything out, stacked it neatly in a folder, and set it on the table, not to accuse her, but to face her one last time. That evening I asked her to sit down. The older kids were there too. I didn't want to fight. I wanted a moment of truth. I spoke slowly, clearly. Every word felt like a stone dropping into water. I don't need your confession, I said. I just want you to look at our kids and tell them something honest. She stayed silent, avoided my eyes. The room grew so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, she stood up and said softly, "If that's what you believe, then believe it. I have nothing to say." Then she walked to her room and closed the door. No tears, no apology. Just the sound of that door closing, the sound of a marriage ending. That night I stayed in the living room with the kids. No one said much, but in their eyes I saw something: unity, strength, and a quiet belief. Even if Mom betrayed us, we were still a family. In that moment, I knew what I had to do, not for revenge, but for release. I contacted a divorce lawyer and told him everything. He sat in silence for a long time, then said, "You should prepare yourself. This won't just be a legal battle. It'll be a war of spirit." I nodded. I was too tired to be afraid anymore. All I wanted was to end this with dignity and protect what peace my children still had. Around that time, I also signed up for therapy. At first, I thought I didn't need it. But after just a few sessions, I realized how broken I'd become. I wasn't that confident, strong man anymore. I was just a father, trying to balance truth and forgiveness. Can I forgive her? Maybe not yet. But I knew one thing: I couldn't let hate consume what was left of my life. So I started writing a journal every day. Every thought, every emotion, every small shift inside me. Each word felt like cutting something out of my chest. Painful, but healing. And slowly I learned that justice doesn't always mean making someone else hurt. Sometimes it means finding peace for yourself. When the divorce papers were finally ready, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not joy, just release. For the first time, I'd found the courage to end a story that had gone on too long. I stopped waiting for an apology. Maybe she's living with her own kind of fear, one I'll never understand. But between us, trust was gone. And once trust dies, nothing can bring it back. Before signing, I looked at the family photos on the wall. There we were smiling, so happy, so innocent. No idea what was coming. I whispered to myself, maybe love doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. And now that love belongs to my children. I gathered the photos, placed them in a box, and walked out of the house that once was home. I didn't look back, because sometimes, to move forward, you have to let go. The day I left that house, the sky was a dull gray, as if it too carried a sorrow it couldn't quite name. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. Just a quiet emptiness, the kind that comes when a chapter ends. No noise, no fight, just silence. I knew I'd lost a lot: a wife, a home, a piece of my faith in life. But in the ashes, I still had 5 children, and a heart that hadn't completely broken. In the first days after the divorce, I lived in a small apartment near work. Everything was painfully quiet. No footsteps in the morning, no laughter echoing through the halls. I had to relearn how to live alone, how to cook for myself, how to fall asleep in silence without choking on the emptiness. At first I hated that quiet, but slowly I realized it was healing me piece by piece. I kept going to therapy. My therapist told me, don't run from the pain. Sit with it. She encouraged me to write my story, not to complain, but to understand what I'd been through, and to see that I'd survived. So each night I'd open my laptop and type, letting the words bleed out of me. At first it was just a private journal, but later I started sharing pieces of it on a forum for people who'd been betrayed in marriage. I never expected what happened next. Thousands of people read it, shared it, thanked me. They said my story made them feel less alone. And that's when I understood pain, when shared with honesty, can become light. I started writing more, not just to tell, but to heal. Some call it writing to survive. I think they're right. My kids visited often. They were growing faster, stronger than I could have imagined. Every time I saw them, I felt pride and gratitude. Despite everything, they hadn't turned bitter. They didn't hate their mother. They simply chose to love better, live kinder. And maybe that's exactly what I'd always hoped for. One day my oldest daughter said to me, "Dad, sometimes loss isn't the end. It's how we find ourselves again." That sentence stayed with me for a long time. I realized I'd been so busy searching for a reason behind the betrayal that I'd forgotten the real thing I needed to find was me. So I started to change. I began exercising in the mornings, learning new recipes, even taking a photography class. I wanted to see the world through a different lens, softer, more forgiving. Some mornings I'd stand in the park and watch the sunrise and feel a strange, gentle peace. Not because I'd forgotten the past, but because I'd learned to accept it as part of who I am. A year later, when the court officially finalized the divorce, I didn't feel bitterness anymore. I simply sent my ex-wife a short message. Thank you for the years we had. Mistakes and all, they'll always be part of my life. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. But after pressing send, I felt free. Now I'm no longer searching for justice or an apology. I just want to live honestly, to live fully, and to keep loving not someone new but life itself after all the hurt. Because I've learned sometimes losing everything is how you learn to love again. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what was done. It means giving yourself the right to be at peace. When I look at my children now, I see that same light in their eyes. That's what I've managed to keep the unconditional love between a father and his kids. And as long as I still have that, I can keep going no matter how broken the past may be. I once thought I'd lost it all. But I've come to see that even in loss, you can begin again if you dare to face it, forgive it, and believe that tomorrow still holds light. If my story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share, so maybe someone out there can find a little strength too. Thank you for listening.